morning to this SMAC Webinar, Sitecore Strategy MVP group. There's Kim. On the, what is for me the 14th of June, but is in fact for you the 13th of June. So that's funny how time zones work, isn't it? So joining us today are Deepthi Katta. Did I get that correct, Deepthi? Sorry.
Yeah, you got it right.
Deepthi's in California. She is the Associate Technical Director at Verndale, and she's going to be talking to us about elevating your delivery with Sitecore Managed Cloud. Cade Whitbourn, who is in my time zone here in New South Wales, is the Digital Strategy Manager at ASEC. And he's going to be talking, and this one's really interesting, about, and not that yours not interesting, Deepthi's just, this is like a hot topic that I'm definitely working on right now, which is comparing Sitecore Analytics to GA4. If any of you have not gone down the GA4 hole, like you haven't been required to go down the GA4 hole, I would say, probably don't. But if you are required to do it, then, it's a lot. And then Megan Jensen is in Minneapolis, right? Yeah, that's right.
Correct.
Senior Solution Architect at Perficient. And Megan is just going to be throwing in the whole kitchen sink because she will be comparing personalization, experimentation, and analytics in Sitecore XM, XP, XM Cloud, CDP, Personalize, and Send. Okay,
it's great.
Very tired. There'll be a few announcements at the end. If you can please put any questions that you have in the chat, that would be great, and we can come to them, at the end for the Q&A. And with that, I will hand over to Deepthi to talk to us about Sitecore Managed Cloud. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Alison, for that introduction. So let's get this rolling, right? So today I'm here. Actually, thank you for tuning in, everybody who could make time for us today. Much appreciated. So I'm going to talk about, how you all can elevate your delivery to new heights with Sitecore Managed Cloud. So before we dig more deep into Managed Cloud, a quick word about myself. Hey, everybody, this is Deepthi here, and currently I am Tech Director at Verndale, and I lead cross-functional teams who build DXP solutions. At the end, striving the best to kind of hit the balance and make sure everybody can walk out happy and proud about what we build is my goal. And I've been Sitecore MVP for 5 years. Really privileged to kind of able to keep that title for all this while. And then I've been working with Sitecore for over a decade. It's been quite a journey. And I have to point out that I'm a true believer of destiny. I just feel like everything happens for a reason, and that's how I've been brought up for some extent. So I trust the destiny factor most of my life. And I have a blog, unravelsitecore.com. You can check out more about me and my blog post there. And I'm on Twitter and on LinkedIn. So you can catch me there if you have some questions after the session. So let's dive right in, right? I mean, how I had on my mind to talk about Sitecore Managed Cloud today is, of course, start with the current position of where Sitecore Managed Cloud fits, given the whole new direction and path and dreams of Sitecore, just to make sure that what we talk is still relevant. So we're going to start right there, and we're going to talk about migration path, right? I mean, this is, according to me, the right order of things based on what I have dealt with, in terms of Managed Cloud in Verndale and also in my practice team. I felt like this order always helps. And again, it's not something universal. It's not like a, one pill for everything sort of, but it does give a very good start for somebody who's thinking about moving to Managed Cloud. And the last but not least, improvise, right? I mean, this is the only time ever I get to say this. So an infinite loop is not a bug here, right? I mean, it's actually a feature. Improvising what you actually built on is kind of like second nature, especially for Managed Cloud. So we're going to talk about how you can improvise and reach that new level and new height that we're talking about. So yeah, without any further ado, let's talk about current position of Sitecore Managed Cloud. I mean, with all the SaaS buzz and XM Cloud and where the world is heading, for all the right reasons, right? I mean, it's super cool to be able to have freedom to choose the best in class and steer away from monolithic solutions. I mean, it sounds really cool. And all the organizations are, and clients are heading that path at some point now or some point in near future. But it is important to note that though it is super cool, not every organization may steer that way, like not anytime soon, right? Like, because there might be, I don't know, strong technology preference, there might be expertise on XM and XP, and they want to kind of like invest more on that, and there might be some comfort or like shortcomings or like something pain point that they can't deal with XM Cloud. So long story short, is it still relevant, we may ask? It is 100% relevant as long as Sitecore is having the offerings of XP and XM in their stack of products. So it is still very much relevant. Now let's talk about managed cloud options here. And again, this is by no means a 101 session. This is just here to kind of like very briefly talk about like what are the options here and what is my primary focus is going to be for the rest of the session. So they have two options here. One is standard, one is premium. And premium in essence is like mostly for that support and more nurturing needed from Sitecore side. In Verndale, we typically deal with standard, and most of the session that I have here might apply mostly for standard, but might apply a little bit for premium as well. And let's talk about deployment options here, because again, this is just to kind of note that my focus area here is PaaS, Microsoft Azure with Azure App Services. They're basically two deployment options that Sitecore provides. One is Docker containers with Kubernetes, and the other one is PaaS. So my focus area will be PaaS. Now let's talk about the order of things, right? I mean, first things first, like these are very important steps for any managed cloud implementation. Now, let's say you're on the client side or you are on an implementer side, such as like us, like Verndale, right? Like, so one of the first steps, and I've actually seen it like not been done, which is kind of, you wouldn't expect that, like, people would jump and start doing things without understanding what was actually really sold. So it is super important that everybody understands the contract first, because, contract that is signed between client and Sitecore for Sitecore Managed Cloud really gives away that like basic foundation, right? Like, what are the environments? What are the additional infrastructure pieces? Do they have a WAF? Do they have a CDN? Do they have a disaster recovery, right? Like, how many concurrent users can log in and stuff like that, right? I mean, that's like a stepping first stone onto the next things that follow on. The next immediate one is creation of environments and review. Again, like, there is a ton of things that has to be done here, but I won't go in detail. But one of the important things that I would say here is that collaboration, the strong collaborations that need to happen from either the client side or vendor side with Sitecore in creating all these environments and whipping up all these environments that are needed based on the contract for deploying the code, deploying your Sitecore solution onto Azure apps, in our case, app services. Right. So review is also equally important to make sure that the first step is done right, because of course Sitecore team does this hundreds of times for different clients, but we have seen in the past that it's almost like hand in hand. Like, just when Sitecore is done with the environment setup, like if we can check and make sure that the environment is running with grace, I think it is really, really helpful in the steps moving forward. So I highly encourage that. Azure have like some health checks. Then we have our typical like app insights, logs, blah blah blah. Like, so all of those review checks will really help making sure that we are starting off with the right foot here. And then next up is actually shipping all that code. Again, like, we have seen so many different ways of doing this, but Azure DevOps is your best friend. Like, as long as that deployment is happening smoothly, synchronously, using any of your favorite tools. We use TDS for the most part, but it's again, like, any ways, any best practices that you guys have on the client side or on the implementer side, it's important to follow all of those and ensure that there is a simple and seamless path towards deploying the code and solution to the app services. And then last but not least here is is there something special? Because every project, every Sitecore installation is special in its own way, right? Like there might be different third-party dependencies, there might be custom solar cores, or there might be whitelisting required. So it's very important that you make sure that all those bells and whistles work properly when you are about to deploy, and have a solid plan for each of those. One of the examples that comes to my mind is IP whitelisting, right? I mean, we might think like, okay, that's like simple. Like you go to network, you have add a firewall rule that simply says, hey, don't allow any anonymous access. But it is more than that when it comes to managed cloud. First, you want to make sure that all the app services within your resource group can seamlessly talk with each other. But it also matters like your third parties, like maybe you have an image repository somewhere, and maybe they're trying to send requests back to you, like back to the app service. So it's super important that all of those intricacies are covered. And again, like the last one here is improvise. So let's talk a little bit about how you can improvise now, like now that, let's say, you've shipped all your code up there, and you want to make sure that when you are live, or when you're about to be live, you don't like surprise, you don't want surprises, because I feel like none of us, and none of us on the client side, like surprises. So one of the key things that we need to focus here is performance, right? This, as I said, like contract being the first step, I want to point out that contract is just that foundation, right? It doesn't need to say that the app service that Sitecore is recommending by no means is 100% enough. So it is very important that, like the size of the contract is suggests in terms of app services, is the starting point and not really the ending of where you want to go with, right? Like so it's very important that load testing is done. I almost feel like it's a mandatory thing to do to ensure that everything is working seamlessly. And then there is cache tuning, which I think is no surprise in terms of HTML caching, rendering caching of Sitecore. And there is also search performance, right? There's so much you can do about Solar, especially if Solar is in use. And some of these that I noted here, you can find it in the KB articles and elsewhere. But I feel like these are super important to make sure that we hit that level that we're talking about in terms of performance, including the CDN, right? To keep moving forward, one of the most important things here, and again, like this, people may think, okay, this is maybe not mandatory, but according to me, it's super important, right? Like at the end of the day, everything boils down to money. Cost, reducing that cost and improving quality is super duper important. Like for example, security also kind of comes into the same place. So we have to make sure that the web application firewall is set up, and there are some cool things that Sitecore support team actually provide to make your life easy. And I want to note that down, which is the MCS audit report. You can actually create a ticket with Sitecore and review the audit report that's sent to you to make sure that, like your SQL databases are up to par, maintenance plans are there, some of these performance tweaks that I talked about are all in place. So the audit really, like spells it out what you need to do to keep that security and performance in check. And again, like we talked about it a little bit, but scaling up the resources based on the usage is super important. And there are some gotchas that I came to know, like for example, Redis and search stacks. There are few plans that do better in terms of performance and quality. So it's important that those are set to the level of, like what Sitecore recommends. For instance, Redis from C1 to C2, because C2 has like better performance. And in such stacks, if your documents are like closer to million, I think it's free of cost. You can bump it up to like from small to medium, for example. So these are like couple gotchas. And again, you have to stay in touch with your Sitecore rep to make sure that you're taking the right decisions at every step of the way. But these are some of the things that we learned along our processes. And again, like faster time to market, right? I mean, at the end of the day, Sitecore Managed Cloud, like several other Sitecore products, strives to get from the marketing to the infrastructure to the dev team. Like, how can we make sure that we can go to the market faster? Maybe it like using all the XM and XP core features, but it also means that Managed Cloud can also give you other flexibility. For instance, adding additional services, like to top off what you have, similar to that SaaS concept, like add what you need, but only in Managed Cloud here. So it's like you can start off and then start building on top of it with like minimal intrusion and configuration. So that is cool. And again, like, faster deployments is really important here and key here. And scaling is also important in terms of based on your traffic needs, where you want to hit. And last but not least, I think I would like to say that it is super important that you stay in touch with Sitecore representatives and deployment technical architects all along the way to ensure that you're hitting that new level that you want to using Sitecore Managed Cloud. And that brings us to our thank you slide. By no means is like a Bible. This is just a starting point, and these are some of the references. And if you all have any questions or any comments, I'm more than happy to talk to you all on either LinkedIn or Twitter. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Deepthi. That was great. Lots of really, really useful tips in there, and I will be connecting with you on LinkedIn right now. Quick question. How relevant is Sitecore Managed Cloud in an era where everyone is slowly moving into / exploring the Jamstack framework? I'm assuming
I think I started the presentation. I started my presentation there because I kind of knew that many people will have that burning question.
Okay.
Just to kind of reiterate.
Might have been somebody who joined a little late then.
Yeah. I guess in a nutshell, right? I mean, that's acknowledged, but I don't think it's going to be relevant anytime soon, given some limitations. Of course, we're all super excited, including at Verndale, to move towards XM Cloud, but it's going to take a little bit of time, right? And we have to cater to the clients who are falling behind and also cutting edge. So as implementers, it's important to not forget and leave behind somebody who's not just ready yet. So as long as Sitecore gives XM and XP in their core offerings, it's going to Managed Cloud is going to stay relevant.
Okay, absolutely. Great. Thank you very much. All right. So joining me now is Cade, as I said, from New South Wales, so just down the road from me. And he is the Digital Strategy and Client Success Manager at ASEC. He's going to talk to us about Sitecore Analytics and Google Analytics 4. So take it away, Cade.
So what I want to talk about today is combining the powers of Sitecore and Google Analytics. And really, from our perspective, it's about helping us think about how can we help ourselves and our clients get more value from our existing investment in analytics tools and platforms. So about me, I've been in Sitecore for actually less than a year now. So go easy on me. I've had a broad digital background before coming to the Sitecore world. And I think this is where I'm supposed to say that, Sitecore is by far the best DXP I've worked with over the last 20 years.
Checks in the mail, Cade.
Tick. Yep, good. And really, I consider myself super lucky to be part of ASIC, which is one of Australia's leading Sitecore digital experience agencies. We've got a combined experience of more than 27 years MVP status amongst a handful of us, including 2 strategy MVPs, one of which is myself. So to start with a bit of the problem, this is probably quite familiar to us all. There is a data problem out there amongst ourselves and with our clients. We all want to be data driven, but in most cases, we've just got too much data. We've got low quality data. We don't know what the data means. We don't know how to use the data, interpret it. We don't necessarily have the right tools in place. There's a big data problem out there. And as Sitecore strategy people, the question for us is how can we help our clients start to deal with their data problem? And we're not going to solve it by any means today, but I just want to suggest a few ways that we can start to help in very non-technical, strategic ways to help our clients get a handle on how to, as I say, make better use of the analytics tools to help interpret and resolve some of their data problems. And some of the tactics I'm going to talk about today is stuff that you can actually start doing tomorrow with your clients. And specifically when it comes to Sitecore Analytics and Google Analytics, as I say, I've only been in the world of Sitecore for less than a year, but every client I've had at some point has asked the question, well, what do we need Sitecore Experience Analytics for if we've already got Google Analytics? What does each tool do? How are they different? What do I use them for? Do I even really need both? And I've seen a couple of different ways that we answer that question. The first way, we can pitch it as a bit of a competition, right? Google Analytics versus Sitecore Analytics. Sitecore Analytics has got some strengths. It's really good at insightful, actionable, value-based analytics that you can pick up and use within Sitecore XP. But then, of course, Google Analytics has got a massive market share. It can do some powerful things as well, particularly as it moves to GA4. So I want to suggest we shouldn't be too quick to pick a fight. Don't pick a fight you're not sure that you can win. I don't think pitting them against each other is the right way to frame how we should use our analytics tools. The other way we might talk about it is as two equal but different tools. They do different things. They track behavior differently. They're each interested in different types of behavior analysis, and they drive different types of business decisions and actions. And that's true, but it still leaves open the possibility that one is enough. What if our clients aren't using personalization? What if they don't have enough Sitecore licenses to have everybody in there viewing the reports? If Google Analytics does what they need, maybe they don't need Sitecore Experience Analytics on top of that. So the danger of having two equal but different tools is that one is seen as surplus. Each additional tool we add is just another cost in time and effort and upkeep, and more tools is not necessarily better. So I don't think treating them as equal but different is necessarily the best answer either. I think we need a third way to answer that question, and that is that as the tools work together, you actually get more value and more insight, and you can generate more buy-in than if the tools are used individually. So the analytics tools together, combined, give you greater value than the sum of the parts. And that's what I want to explore today. How Sitecore and Google Analytics can work together to get us better results. But we need to say first off that Universal Analytics, or Google Analytics version 3, is all but dead. So a couple of dates there on the screen. So it will stop collecting data from only a couple of weeks away, actually. And then in a year's time, clients and ourselves will no longer be able to access historical data in Universal Analytics accounts. So this is a massive change. It's affecting pretty much everybody because everybody uses Google Analytics. And this is really driving the need to have this conversation with our clients now about what are we doing with analytics. But Google hasn't left us high and dry, of course, so long live Google Analytics version 4. But yeah, as I say, now is the time. So everybody has to get their head around Google Analytics 4. Everybody has to learn a new tool. So whether we like it or not, this is the time to be having the conversation about how we can help our clients get more value from their analytics tools. And as I say, not just in ways that complement each other, but actually by working together, giving greater insight and depth of understanding. The other point, as I said just a second ago, Google Analytics has got a massive market share. So 85% of websites use GA. So there's no getting around the fact that we need to have some good answers to the question of what we do with Google Analytics alongside Sitecore. And GA4 has got a pretty steep learning curve. It's now arguably more powerful and more extensible than ever before because it integrates with tools like Google Tag Manager and Looker Studio and BigQuery. And there's a possible reinvention of Google's optimization tool coming as well. So watch this space. But basically everybody uses Google Analytics. So the onus really is on us as Sitecore Analytics people to show value of Sitecore, to keep it in the mix. And lastly, what I've got there is a win-win-win. So what I mean by that is, our clients win if we can help them align their analytics tools and generate more value. As Sitecore strategists, we win when what we do with Sitecore is applied more broadly across the digital experience ecosystem. So we want Sitecore to be part of an integrated, holistic view of digital experience. And then lastly, our clients win. Our clients win when they're using their tools effectively. We win when we're driving experience across the entire ecosystem using Sitecore, and then our end users win when ultimately they get to enjoy the better digital experiences. So triple win. Okay, so how are we going to do this? So we're going to start with matching our metrics, converging our conversions, duplicating our dashboards, and aligning audiences. I know it's pretty cute, but hopefully there's going to be a bit of substance here as well. So to start with, match our metrics. So the idea here is about understanding how close we can get the default metrics across Sitecore and GA4. And I've got a little table here based on my own investigations. And what you can see is if you know the right metrics to compare, the numbers are actually quite comparable. And this is not to pretend that there's no difference in measurement models. There are significant difference in how the tracking is triggered and data is captured, etc. But it does highlight that if we choose our language and our metrics well, we can get a good degree of consistency. With some exceptions. So in some cases, the measurement models and the metrics are so different, it's best not to even go there. And a good example in my table here is the comparison between bounce rate and engagement rate. So engagement rate is the opposite of bounce rate. But as you can see, there's a massive variance. And actually even comparing GA3 to GA4 bounce rates, it's pointless. The metrics are too different. GA4 has a much more nuanced way of measuring engagement rate. But these are examples from a real client site. The variances in many cases are quite small. So I encourage you to check your own accounts and see what kind of mileage you can get. But matching metrics is really just level one. We want to move on from there and move to converging our conversions. Now, conversions are one type of metric. And firstly, let's just talk about the terminology. So in Sitecore Analytics, we've got goals, and when a goal is completed, we've got a conversion. In GA3, we used to have goals, but in GA4, we don't have goals anymore. In GA4, everything is based on events. So it's an entirely event-based measurement model, which means that our conversions are actually conversion events. So everything's an event. You select from the events which ones you want to be a conversion, and then when a conversion event is completed, we have a conversion. So again, if we're thinking about how to match our metrics and use consistent language, we would be talking about conversions because that's consistent across both platforms. But the power of converging goes beyond just using common language here. Now, we know that one distinguishing feature of Sitecore Experience Analytics is engagement value. Which is based on goals having different values based on the relative impact for the business or for customers. But this concept of engagement value doesn't have to be exclusive to Sitecore. There's nothing stopping us from matching Sitecore goal values with Google Analytics conversion event values. In other words, let's converge our conversions so that we're measuring the same values across both platforms. And to do that, two simple steps. Basically, you take what you've created in Sitecore and you rebuild it in Google Analytics 4. Now, I'm going to assume you know how to do the Sitecore steps. That's pretty straightforward, creating goals and values. So let's look at the GA4 steps in more detail. Now, it's true, I've been using GA and GTM for much longer than Sitecore, so perhaps I'm a bit biased, but in my experience, GA is really easy to create events and custom events and conversions and values. Pretty much if you can do it in Sitecore, you should be able to do it in GA4. The screenshot here on the right shows some of the out-of-the-box events that you can track in GA4, and it's pretty powerful. There's a fair bit there, and more so than what was in GA3. So you can do all sorts of things out of the box. But for our purposes, when we want to add our engagement value to the events, we have to create a custom event based on an out-of-the-box event. So the screenshot here on the right shows an event based on an outbound click to a shop page. And then we're going to be adding additional parameters of currency and value in order to build out our engagement value scale within GA, which is good and easy, but in some cases you can't leverage out-of-the-box events. So you'll need to use Google Tag Manager to create custom events. And again, really simple to use. As long as you can identify the event through some kind of class or URL or action, then you can build a trigger off it and you can create a custom event. In this case, the event is called share. And then we're passing the additional parameters here, again, the currency and the value parameter with the value that matches our engagement value scale. Sorry, I keep moving my slide on. One more step. Anyway, we'll stay here because this is the next step. So once you've got your events configured either directly in GA4 or in GTM, the events will start firing. You'll start getting a count of events. And then in GA4, you go to your event screen and you simply toggle the events you want to be conversions using this mark as conversion toggle. Okay, so at this point, you've successfully scaled your engagement value scale from Sitecore across to GA4, and you're tracking the same conversions and the same values in both platforms. You've doubled the effectiveness and utilization of your engagement value scale. Well done. Okay, and then so once we have our metrics matched and our conversions converged, we go to the next level again and start reporting on this same information. So what I've got here is basically just some examples of how I've quickly and simply replicated Sitecore Experience Analytics dashboards in Google Looker Studio, which is Google's tool for doing the same. So on the left there, I've got the default dashboard within Experience Analytics, and I've recreated that here. As you can see, there's a similar kind of trend with a dip in value and a rise in visits towards the latter part of the month. And as you can see, we're now tracking value in GA4 in a consistent way to what we've been doing in Sitecore for quite a while. I will say in the Looker Studio dashboard, because we're not constrained to looking at Sitecore sites only, there's a broader scope of sites and conversions being tracked, hence why the conversion rate is a bit higher there, but I think you get the idea. Here's another dashboard just looking at conversions and conversion rate. Again, the Sitecore dashboard on the left and the Looker Studio on the right. And again, you can see a similar pattern of a dip in conversion rate at about the same time period. And the last example, this is of our conversion drill down. Now, the additional power of Looker Studio is that you can obviously create your own, so it's totally flexible and simple to use. And we're using a control here on the right, which is listing all our conversions. So using the single visualization, we can select the conversions we want or any combination of conversions and map that in a single graph. It's quite powerful and simple to use. Okay, and then the last level is aligning our audiences. So firstly, we just need to get something out of the way. As I said, I've been in Sitecore world for almost a year, and I've tried my best to get my head around profile keys and profile values and profile cards and pattern cards and the like. And what I've got here on the screen, I'm not going to read it. I don't expect you to read it. This is the simplest explanation I could find of how all these different bits and pieces fit together. And to be honest, it still confuses me. And if it confuses me, I'm sure it confuses our clients as well. So I'm sure if you haven't already, you've thought about the need to try and simplify some of this language in terms of how we talk about it with our clients. So really moving forward, I think regardless of what things are called in Sitecore XP, we need to use the language of audiences and segments, and then we use rules, conditions, and triggers to build and activate off our audiences and segments. Just back to the principle of matching our metrics and keeping our language consistent. So let's assume you've done the work in Sitecore and you've built some basic audience segments using the things we're not going to mention again, keys and profile keys and values and pattern cards. And let's assume you've used a pretty simple one-to-one profile matching strategy where the website visitor viewed page A, page B, page C, page D, and then we profiled them into our audience segment called corporate. Now, when it comes to GA4, the good news is that GA4 has the same concept of audiences. So far, so good. And shown here on the right is a screenshot where we've built our audience in GA4 using conditions. And in this case, when the visitor viewed page A, B, C, and D, we profile them into our audience segment called corporate. Okay, sound familiar? And then also on the right is when we can see our audience building. It gives you a nice little summary of the number of users in that audience. In this case, it's 54. And this is very similar to how Sitecore CDP does it as well. Now, I want to stress at this point, when we're aligning our audiences, it's not about matching the numbers because these numbers will be different. They're building audiences in different ways. But the key win here is using the same audience and segment strategy across both platforms. So as digital experience people, we want to keep our audiences and segments in focus by referencing them frequently, by using them as much as we can. And this is the power of aligning our audiences here. We're using the same strategy across both platforms. And so at this point, you've got an audience and segment strategy in Sitecore that you can use for personalization and testing and segmented reporting. And you've got the same audience and segment strategy in GA4. And in GA4, you can use it for segmented reporting as well as sharing audiences with Google Ads for remarketing or lookalike prospecting. So we no longer need to store our persona and journey artifacts in a drawer. We're doubling the utilization. And then, of course, you can build similar looking dashboards as well. Okay, just to wrap up, apologies if this has all sounded a bit old school talking about Sitecore XP. A couple of quick comments on the new composable tools. So with XM Cloud, it does come with basic analytics, but there's no goals or conversions or value built in. So what to me this suggests is that the role of GA4 is going to continue. And continue to add value and augment what we can do within the Sitecore tools themselves. XM Cloud has basic personalization. As we know, it uses audiences and triggers based on conditions, which directly matches what we can do in GA4. So this is a great win, a great piece of alignment. And then in Sitecore Personalize and CDP, so obviously Sitecore Personalize is the same basic personalization conditions and kind of practices as XM Cloud, which is good. Sitecore Personalize has goals, but that's obviously relevant to the context of experiences and experiments. So if that's the place where we talk about goals, I think that makes sense. And CDP, obviously, you can build segments as subcategories of audiences. So again, pretty consistent with how we're thinking and talking about it in GA4 as well. So yeah, I hope that's helped to start the thinking process in your own minds about how we can help our clients get better value from their analytics investment.
Thank you, Cade. That was actually, I mean, I don't want to sound surprised. That was very interesting. I particularly like the bit of matching profile cards into audience segments. I think that's really clever. Might have screenshotted that one. And I also really like claps for the alliteration. Okay, so Megan, you ready to go?
I'm ready.
All the things. Go for it.
Awesome. So I am taking a completely different track than Cade. I'm going to make you pick your fighter. It's an entirely different way of looking at the tools that you choose. So my name is Megan Jensen. I'm a Sitecore Strategy MVP and a Senior Solution Architect at Perficient. You can maybe tell from my accent, I'm from Minnesota. A lot of people call me MJ because there are a lot of Megans in the world, and you can find me at MJ Knows Sitecore on TikTok and Twitter and various other places. So I've worked in marketing for a long, long time and Sitecore for about the last 6 years doing Sitecore Strategy. So nice to meet everyone. So up until about a year ago, your biggest decision when you were trying to figure out what you wanted to use for personalization was XM or XP, and they're night and day. XM is very old school, great CMS, but not a ton of personalization capabilities. XP was kind of the gold standard. It had everything. It could do everything we thought it could do at the time. And now that Sitecore is kind of entering the composable DXP universe, now we have some decisions to make. Now we've got XM Cloud, we've got Personalize with CDP, and there's even some capabilities within Sitecore Send. So now our clients are in a position where, as they're choosing their direction architecturally and from a Sitecore and from a technology standpoint, they also need to stop and think for a second, hey, what does our marketing team need for capabilities? And how is that going to affect our decisions moving forward? So, you can get into a situation where they all kind of look the same and personalization is personalization, but that's really not the case. They function differently, they provide different things, and you really have to think carefully about what you need to do with the tool that you settle on. So My job as a consultant, I know there's a lot of consultants on this call. I don't want you to be this guy. I don't want you to like decide on one platform and then have second thoughts and say, oh gosh, it would have been really fun to do these things that, Personalize could have done or XM Cloud could have done. I want you to be this guy. I want you to have no regrets. I want you to make a really educated decision for your immediate and long-term needs. And there's a lot of things to take into consideration when you're deciding on a platform from a lot of perspectives. And kind of one of the things that unfortunately is kind of last on the list of considerations is what kind of things can you do with the platform that you're going to spend a bunch of money on and build your new website on. So we're going to talk kind of quickly about all the different aspects of personalization and content testing and analytics. And at a high level, we're going to kind of put the 4 platforms up against each other. XM, XP, XM Cloud, and Personalize with and without CDP. And we're throwing a little Sitecore Send for good measure. Now, please keep in mind, this is mostly data that I've gotten from Sitecore documentation and the projects that we've done. If you know something different, please tell me in the chat. I do not want to be wrong. So if I make a poor assessment of a platform and you know something I don't, please share it. I'm not above being wrong. I'm wrong a lot. So the first thing we're going to talk about is in-session versus multi-session personalization. Just so we level set, in-session being the stuff that a user is doing on your website right now at this moment before they exit your website. Multi-session is basically remembering the stuff a user has done on previous visits. So with XM, there's really only in-session personalization. You can only personalize based on what a user is doing in that current visit. With XP, if you have XDB enabled, you can do multi-session personalization and testing. So you can track users' behavior over multiple sessions. XM Cloud, to the best of my knowledge, is primarily in-session personalization. Now, when you get to Personalize and CDP, now you can do some really, really fun stuff, especially when you have CDP working with it. What you learn about your users and their behavior and their engagement, their preferences is almost limitless. With CDP, it depends on where you're pulling data from and that sort of thing and how it's set up. But you can learn a lot about your users, and then you can actually build your strategies based around that. Base your promotions and your sales and offers, things like that. Base your editorial calendar based on what you learn about your users. So CDP is really the gold standard. It's the winner on this slide as far as remembering your users' behavior and then allowing you to work off of that. The next thing we're going to talk about is rules-based personalization. So if you've worked with XM and XP, you know what I'm talking about, but it's kind of conditional personalization. You take either a page or a component and you say, if this rule is true or untrue, show this rather than that. That's the kind of most base way of explaining it. With XM, there is out-of-the-box personalization rules, conditional renderings, date, GOIP, item information, item version. Those are kind of the most common rules that we use. With XP, you get all of those, plus you get a whole bunch of other rules, and you can also customize the rules that you use for component-based personalization. With XM Cloud, there's a good handful of really useful out-of-the-box conditions or rules. So there's time, device, location, page views, user interactions, point of sale, and you can create variants of these rules to a certain extent. But from what I understand, you can't really customize rules. Now, I was at Sitecore DX in Boston last month, and one of the things that Dave Flanagan said was that in 2023, sometime they're going to be adding to that rule set. So hopefully we'll have a few more to play with. Now, I say with Personalize, does it do rules-based personalization? Well, kind of. I mean, Personalize can do anything you want it to do, but if you're coming from the XP world to Personalize, you kind of have to burn down everything you thought you knew about personalization and the way that it works and the way that you think about it. So yes, Personalize can do rules-based personalization, but it's not really thought of in that way. With behavioral personalization, again, with XM, there's no behavioral-based personalization. It's really in session and rules-based. With XP, yep, you absolutely can do behavioral personalization. It takes some time to get it set up. You have to be really thoughtful about how you do it. But using profile and pattern cards, I know we weren't going to say those words, but I said them anyway. When XDB is enabled, yes, you can do behavioral personalization based on content consumption, engagement behavior. You can learn more about those users and then give them more of what you think they want. With XM Cloud, there isn't really behavioral personalization, but you can kind of fake it a little bit with the rules that are available, with some of the variants and that sort of thing. So you can do some, like, if they saw this piece of content, then show them that. You can do a certain kind of behavioral personalization light with XM Cloud. And again, with personalize, yes, you can do behavioral personalization, but we don't really call it that. You can do really complex, robust, scalable personalization tactics pretty much anywhere. Just try not to think of it as behavioral personalization. It doesn't have those neat little buckets like XP did. So XP and personalize definitely are the winners for behavioral personalization. So omnichannel or full stack personalization is really, really fun. XM doesn't do it. You can get XP to do it, but you got to be smart and you got to be good, and it's kind of putsy and hard to make it happen. XM Cloud, nope, to the best of my knowledge, you're just personalizing on the website. But if you have personalized, this is where it gets really, really fun, because you can build experiences based on a lot of conditions on pretty much any digital channel that's connected to your CDP and personalize. So if you want to personalize on text or email or social media or kiosks in person, pretty much any digital place you interact with your users, you can personalize there using full stack triggered or interactive experiences. So A/B testing, that's another kind of bucket of work that we like to do. Not available on XM. On XP, you can do a lot of A/B multivariate existence testing, all kinds of content testing when XDB is enabled. With XM Cloud, no, maybe, because at Boston DX, that's another thing that Brian talked about, that Dave talked about, that maybe towards the end of the year, they're going to add some A/B testing capabilities that kind of mirror the out-of-the-box rules that are available. So kind of like personalize, if you can personalize it, you can test it. So I'm keeping my my ear to the ground to hear if and when that's going to become available, because that would really help a lot of clients. And then with personalize, yes, this is one of the most important things it does. It takes a little work, just like setting up experiences, but the idea is that you make experimentation part of your regular content publication and governance process. You want to test just about everything you put out there. I want our clients to know down to the placement of the hero spot and the shade of green and the size of the CTA button, what works. And I want my clients to spend less time on what doesn't and spend more of the time on what they know is going to catch their users' attention and engagement and get them to do the thing we want them to do. The fun thing with Sitecore Send is that you can test your emails against each other. Let's say you have two different versions, maybe they have a different subject line or a different sender, some different content. You can take part of your audience, your recipients, and send those two versions, and whichever one is getting the best engagement, that's the version that gets sent to the rest of your email list. So it's a pretty fun, and it seems pretty easy way to test your email strategies and your content kind of in real time. Analytics, again, like Cade said, this is really, really important. I want our our clients to spend more time on what's moving the needle and less time on busy work, administrative, bureaucratic stuff that everybody hates about their job. do more of what works. And this is the best way to find out what that is. So XM, not a lot of analytics available. With XP, you can set up your experience analytics, experience profiles, path analyzer, and page analyzer. It does take a little work to get that up and running. You have to have all your marketing definitions set up correctly so that you're kind of slicing and dicing your data in a way that makes sense for your team. But XP is pretty great when it comes to analytics. With XM Cloud, I was delighted to see how much data you get without having to do a lot of setup. You can look at site and page level insights, you can filter the analytics, and you can compare analytics based on page variance. So basically looking at the performance of your personalization that you do on XM Cloud. A little bit more on analytics. With Personalize, there are quite a few analytics dashboards, reports available, but really once you pair that with CDP, you're measuring everything under the sun. Every place that you interact with your users digitally, all that data comes back to CDP, and you can build some really robust dashboards, reporting, summaries. Like, you can learn a lot from that. I really think that you should pair it with Google Analytics as well. Just kind of across the board. I like kind of having that validation so that if you have some like numbers on your Sitecore analytics or your CDP reporting that like doesn't quite look right, see if you can validate it against your Google Analytics numbers and just make sure that that's, it's not something wonky in the system. And then with Send, there's a lot of dashboards for your most recent email send. There's a lot of campaign level dashboards. You can track revenue if you set it up correctly and like see like how much money did we make off this email campaign. And then you can look at it at the actual email list dashboard level as well. So this was really fast. It was really high level, but there are a lot of things to consider outside of just capabilities. So whether you're a consultant or you're in-house marketing, like consider what your immediate and long-term needs are. What are the ramifications of upgrades? Like if you're moving to XM Cloud and you want to just try that out for a while and it's working great, stay on XM Cloud. If you decide you need to add CDP and Personalize, you can add that. You can add CDP and Personalize to any of the other platforms if you want a more robust personalization and experimentation experiment. But then also like be realistic about the bandwidth of the marketing and IT teams that are going to have to own this. The worst personalization program is one that's collecting dust. It takes consistency and a little bit of discipline, and you have to keep at it. And then for in-house marketing teams, like how much of this do you want to know? Do you want to be the expert in? Or is that where a partner can bring real value? Are you going to have to hire someone else? What are those kind of logistics looking like? And then are you working with a partner that's willing to be flexible and meet you where you're at? Do they have one offering and this is the only way we're going to implement this product or do strategy with your team, or are they able to be flexible and kind of size up or down depending on your need and the size of your company and the size of your team? So there's a lot to consider. Again, in this day and age, it's more than just how you build your website. It's what your website's going to be able to do for you and your users. So there's a lot more good stuff out there. I'm on LinkedIn. Come find me. I'm on TikTok. I'm on Twitter. And Proficient Blogs has a lot of really good information, but that's true of all partner agencies. Like everyone's giving away this knowledge for free. Go out there and Google it and read people's blogs. That's why we write them. That's why we spend our Sunday nights, writing blog posts for Monday morning. So go find that knowledge. It's out there. So, okay, thanks. I'm done.
Thanks, Megan. I hope the Sunday night blog post writing at least comes with a martini.
Yeah, nice red wine.
Excellent use of memes. You're getting points for memes. Cade got points for alliteration, and Deepthi got points just for being all around awesome. Any questions? Anybody?
Allison, do the decks get sent out, or if you would like a copy of this deck, email me and I'm happy to send it out because there's a lot of like links and documentation in mine.
Yeah, I think that would be really good actually. If you can like PDF it or something and send it to me, and then if anybody wants it, just reach out.
Yeah.
Okay, so a couple of announcements to make. Firstly, Megan, or MJ, has she's looking for some people to help with the Sitecore MVP strategy lunch, which is held in North American time zone. So I won't be on that one because it would be a very early breakfast. It's a great MVP contribution. So if you wanted to get involved in that, fantastic way to meet and talk to the community, do please raise your hand. Also, we have got 2 more webinars coming in August, August the 2nd and August the 8th. So getting a lot of people obviously wanting to present on these lightning fast, learn a lot in an hour calls, and that is fantastic. So please do look out for the invitations for those. Always pick something up from these. And otherwise, I think we'll wrap it up like 2 minutes early. That's incredible. Can you imagine how much we covered in 1 hour? That was insane. I might go and find a coffee. And I think, Cade, you should go find a coffee too and maybe do something about the cows. All right. Thank you, everybody. Talk to you all soon. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.